Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Take the Black Live, the weekly show where myself, my name's Dan, and another gentleman, also named Dan, talk about all things sci-fi, fantasy, movies, TV, books. Thank you for Prince Diana Wave, Daniel. And of course, Game of Thrones House of the Dragon, which is currently in the middle of its second season. Hooray! Hello, Martha, fantasy fan, Natalie Zamora, Urtak, always good to see you, Julie Davies. We are also doing, if you're not aware, I'll start with a plug, as all self-respecting
Oh,
podcasters do,
nice.
that we are
Nice.
currently streaming live after every single new episode of House of the Dragon. So directly after, we talk through the whole episode right at 9 p.m. if you happen to live in the Central Times in the US and elsewhere, whatever, after the episode. So these Wednesday shows, we're still doing them, but we're not going to focus as much on House of the Dragon because we're really covering that on Sundays. Here we're going to talk about a bit House of the Dragon. Sure, why not? We love it. We got some good
Yeah.
responses in the chat from you guys. Loved episode 2, says Fantasy Fan. I did too. Quite solid. Urtak says, all hail King Aegon 2. Completely agree with that. Aegon
Oh
2 is
man.
stealing the show for me. What a delightful little rat bastard. But we are going to do some other things today. If you want to join in for the full House of the Dragon discussion, I suggest you go to the YouTube or Facebook page after each episode and talk to us there. But first, let's engage in a
Nice.
short spot of preambulatory banter. Daniel, how are you?
Wow, that was I feel enlivened actually by that opening banter. I feel ready to talk about stuff now, and I wasn't just a moment ago. So, I'm good. How are you, Dan? How's
I'm so
everyone in the
well.
chat?
We have a good place to start because Robert Harris points out that you actually were not able to get on the Sunday night show because I
I
think
was
a
not.
tornado tore the roof of your house. So why don't we start with that? Yeah. Um, it was
Yeah.
something with weather. I'm sorry you couldn't join us. What did you think of the new House of the Dragon episode, the wonderfully named Rhaenyra the Cruel?
Yeah, so you are right. A tornado did not sweep through my home, but we were on tornado watch and the internet kept going in and out. So alas, I missed the fun hijinks. I was very sad I wasn't here.
Ooh.
But I loved Rhaenyra the Cruel. I thought that was a banger of an episode of House of the Dragon. And unlike Blood and Cheese, which I had some issues with, I
Misgivings.
think I had some misgivings. I didn't really have misgivings that I can really think of very much for the second episode. I thought it was paced well. I really enjoyed how much time they spent on the fallout of Blood and Cheese. I think they did the
Uh-huh.
fallout of Blood and Cheese much better than they did Blood and Cheese itself.
I
Um,
agree.
I loved I loved what they did with Kristen Cole, which like I don't really like Kristen Cole, but I was more interested in him in this episode than any in a very long time. And I think he's got a pretty interesting arc he's going on this season. Aegon, like you said, like everyone has said, Aegon continues to be amazing. The surprise character I enjoyed a lot in the episode for me was Otto Hightower.
Sure.
Otto's, yeah, I thought it was a huge episode for Risifons. And sorry to him if I'm saying your name wrong. But
No
I
one
think
can say
he
Welsh.
really, no one, I certainly can't. But I think he really, really nailed a few important moments for Otto, being stripped of Hand of the King again after, King Viserys stripped
Right.
him of being Hand of the King once back in the day. Um, and yeah, I thought that whole scene, I felt I felt for Otto in that scene. And then he kind of threw it away in the end, when in that high tower cycle of repression where he lovingly tells Allison, "I don't really want to hear about your
No.
sins."
Shh,
And then
shh,
she
shh.
goes, "Yeah, yeah. I love you so much, but please don't talk to me right now about the things you're sad about." So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the Cargill fight. I was certain, so certain that I wrote like a whole breakdown of this
Yes,
fight
you did.
that Eric Cargill, the one serving Aegon, so Eric with an A was the
Hmm.
one who fell on his sword. I was so certain I subjected my poor partner to like a half an hour of rambling about it. I became the Charlie meme from Always Sunny for a solid part of this Sunday night, explaining the different cuts on the different Cargill brothers' legs and the different camera angles and all that stuff. And then the actor for Eric with an E was like, "Yeah, no, no, that was me." So I like that. I think they did that on purpose. They purposely made it confusing to put you in Rhaenyra's shoes so that in that final moment, you're not sure which one it is until he says your grace, and then it's tragic and sad. Um, yeah, like Bushmaster said, I also really love the difference between how the children are being nurtured on the blacks side versus neglected on the greens. I've yeah. So I loved Rhaenyra the Cruel. I think it's a little interesting that they were so cagey about the episode title. Because I don't know how much
Hmm.
anyone in the chat was really paying attention to this, but we didn't get a title for the episode until like well after it was out, which is a little unusual. Like it aired without a title, and then afterward they were like, by the way, it's Rhaenyra the Cruel, in case you were wondering. So I thought that was a little intriguing, just like on the production side of things. But yeah, I loved it. I could ramble about it forever because it was just a great hour of or 72 minutes, I should say, of television.
Oh, very
Did I miss
precise.
anything, Dan? Was there
No,
anything you
that was a.
particularly loved you want to touch on?
I'm more or less in agreement with you. I liked it a lot. The only thing I didn't like was I wish they had kept in the stuff from Fire and Blood, not pictured, where Eric and Arik, or whoever you say their names, got some
Nice.
build
That
up
was
because
good.
they're.
You could tell the difference there.
Thank you. If you were on there on Sunday, I worked through this and was embarrassed on camera about it. Because in Fire and Blood, there's this scene where they both meet up after the coup, but before they fight each other, where they try to convince each other to kind of switch sides, and neither of them
Yes.
budge, and they part on sad, melancholic terms, knowing the next time they meet is going to be these enemies. I feel like that really would have gone. It could have like taken that scene from like good because it was good. Like everything in the episode
Yeah.
was at least good and sometimes very good. They could have taken it from like solid to great. But
Yeah.
that's really my only complaint. Even my Saria was
The,
kind of tolerable. I also think the
I
show
loved
is a
my this
little.
was a great
I
episode for my
don't know how
Saria,
love,
I
but
thought.
yeah, I
I'm
enjoyed
really
her.
enjoying Sonoya Mizuno's performance as Mysaria this season. And like knowing that Mysaria, so like spoiler here for Fire and Blood, but she kind of assumes a Varys type role and her and Rhaenyra have a very interesting relationship. I'm really enjoying, the work that they're doing with her this season. Um,
So far, so
I
good.
missed that scene too that you were talking about with Eric and Arik. Um, I didn't mind it so much, probably because I watched the Green Council episode like right before this one. So their parting was very fresh in my mind from the show because that's the last time they're together in
Sure,
the show before this. And it does still work. They do still have a back and forth there where Eric is like, King Aegon's kind of awful. Don't you see how awful he is? Like, reminder, Aegon has a bastard who lives in the fighting pits of King's Landing in the show. That's going to be relevant at some point.
sure.
But yeah, they cut out that, if I remember right, that Eric and Arik scene you're talking about is uh in the middle of like a treating moment. Like Aegon sends an
It's basically
envoy
when
to
Otto
Rhaenyra.
comes in the Black Queen to talk to Rhaenyra on the bridge. That's
Yes.
when it would have
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, they do it differently in the book where it's like I think it's Grandmaster Orwyle goes and
Hmm.
then Rhaenyra like strips him of his office and is like, "Get out, tell my brother I'll have, my throne or his head," basically. And Eric and Arik have that conversation. So yeah, I could see what you mean. That would have made it better, but I think it was already great. So that's one of those things where it's like the nitpick is definitely there to be made, but like it's so hard to hold that against such an excellent hour of television for
Well,
me.
I can do it because I do think the show struggles with kind of overall vision sometimes, but it was good. It was a very good episode. I liked it a lot. Some great comments as usual. I did that was funny, Bushmaster, that I'm always looking for moments where Rhaenyra is showing a little bit of I don't know, like something being a little less than saintly because I'm afraid they're gonna like deify her. And yeah, I did like
Mhm.
that she was like to Jace. Jace is like, I'll go on my dragon and watch King's Landing. She's like, no, we can't risk you. And then later it's like, hey, Bela, I need you to go on your dragon and watch King's Landing. Just because she's willing to sacrifice Bela, but not Jace. That was nice. I did enjoy that. And
Yeah,
someone
I didn't
asked,
mind
wouldn't
that so much.
no, it was
I
great.
know that
I
I saw
enjoyed that.
Yeah, I saw people, complaining about that on the internet, but I think that choice makes total sense. Jace is her heir. She's just lost her son. Rhaenyra is not gonna coddle Bela either because she's a woman or for any reason really. Like she's a dragon rider, and to Rhaenyra that means she is a capable person who should be filling a place in this war. So
I
yeah,
just hold
I
on to
like that a
any
lot. Plus,
moment where
it's gonna
Rhaenyra
mean
looks
we'll
less than saintly. I think that's great.
yeah. We need to see it's funny because this episode was Rhaenyra the Cruel, and obviously that was, referencing the propaganda that she is Rhaenyra the Cruel. But we're gonna
Ooh,
need to see her actually become Rhaenyra the Cruel at some point in this show, I hope. Because
I'm not
yeah, and
sure.
I'm a little worried too that they're gonna be like, she's misunderstood by history. And I
Nothing's her
I can
fault.
understand the angle of that, but she also needs to make some real questionable choices to get to where she needs to go in the book.
We don't know how far they're going to take it. My worry is it's going to feel patronizing. Like at some point, it's going to
Mm,
start feeling like they're really dancing around having her do anything suspect. And it's going to start feeling patronizing and kind of didactic because, you know, women are capable of making bad decisions too. And a little contrived, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we'll see
yeah.
what happens as we go on. Some other great comments. Natalie, ready for dinner or cruel? Me too. I would love it. Bushmaster, a great question. Is the brothel madam that Aemond was sleeping with Gaiman's mother? Well, I guess possibly. Ooh, that would be a fun way to work her in when they get later to Gaiman Palehair, but that's in the future. We'll see that. And there's one other thing I wanted to
Yeah. Well,
address.
game it.
Somebody, mhm.
Yeah. So Game and Pale Hair, that's the bastard we saw in the fighting pit in the Green Council coup. Um, I I could see them making her the mother of Game and Pale Hair. I don't know how I'll feel about that, but that strikes me as one of those television adaptation choices where it's like you said, Dan, that's a somewhat easy way to continue working in an actor they already have and they already like. Um, but you were gonna grab another question, I think, before I
Well,
so
hey,
rudely cut you off.
I'm loving the comments. Just all of you are all pretty funny. Do you think we'll see so many of the Dragon Pit as Arya? We better eventually. Someone
Next
asked down the
season.
chat,
Yeah.
yeah, probably next season, whether Kristen would get punished for sending the twin to go kill Rhaenyra. And you're like, normally, but not when the idiot king loves the idea and the buck stops with
Yeah.
him. So in that case, probably not, because the guy in charge is um on a similar level when it comes to planning. So probably not. He gets rewarded. There's some great memes going
Yeah.
around of like, like a book called like Failing Upwards, the picture of Kristen Cole on it, which is fun.
Yeah. I think the way you meant to phrase that question, Claudia, was shouldn't Kristen get in trouble for sending Eric to slay the pretender to the throne? Because that's the way Aegon's gonna look at it, and obviously he's gonna think that's great. Brilliant, really. He'll pretend to
Brilliant.
be his own twin.
I mean,
Brilliant.
again, it
Uh,
almost worked. So I don't know. We can't even say it was the absolute worst plan in the world. It was
I
so
did like
close.
that. I did like that it was like, oh, this was really close. Because in the way it's presented in the book, like, there are all these like legends of Eric and Arik. Like I loved I don't know if it's up yet, Dan. I think it is. You wrote a thing looking at all the different times they had been mentioned in A
Oh
Song of
yeah,
Ice and Fire
it's up.
because Eric and it is up. So this is up on winterscoming.net right now. Really interesting article that Dan wrote. So
So good.
Eric and Arik It is so good. Eric and Arik Cargill were mentioned in like Bran's second chapter of A Game of
Mhm.
Thrones. Like they go way, way back in George R. R. Martin's mythos of Westeros in his books. And Sansa talks about them too in A Clash of Kings and how she's saying this to like Tommen because Tommen's crying in one scene and Joffrey's bullying him. And she's like, it's okay for men to cry. Like Eric and Arik Cargill, the twin Kingsguard knights, died on each other's swords with tears on their cheeks, basically. So I liked how there are all these things. The way it's presented in Fire and Blood is like they run into each other in a hallway and very formally are like, we shall now duel because we knew this day would come. And, George R. R. Martin is very careful to be like, that's the way one history recounts it. Another is that it was much more brutal and they were cursing each other as they were fighting. Another is that they were said they loved each other so much. I like that the show did this very very gritty version of it where it's like Eric actually gets all the way to Rhaenyra's bedchamber before Eric stops her. I thought that was a great decision, and I think
Sure.
finally some of the like filling in between the lines of the history, that's in air quotes for the audio listeners, filling in those lines. I think the show is finally hitting its stride with that. Like Cheese was another one I really liked. So Cheese got hanged in
Sure.
this episode. We don't ever find out what happened to Cheese in the book. It's just like Aegon hung all the rat catchers, and you can just assume Cheese escaped or not escaped because it's just really never clarified. And I like
Hmm.
that the show still leaves it that way. Like Aegon doesn't really know, but he's just assuming he hanged them all. He probably got the guy, and we as the audience know he got Cheese. And I think that was a really cool way to do it.
I agree. All right, we could keep talking about this. So far, we're really failing in our
Yeah,
attempt to not talk about less episodes of House of the Dragon on the Wednesday shows, which
it was just that
wonderfully
good.
it was quite good. Good questions, all you guys. I can say that Rook's Rest is absolutely episode 4, whoever asked that. As for like a
Seems like it.
still of a riot being cut out, we're not sure about that, but we're going to be analyzing it soon in written word form.
Yeah,
But
we
let's
have
talk about
thoughts
episode
about that.
3 because we've both seen the third episode. We saw it last night. We get screeners. We're lucky, envious. Do you have any spoiler-free thoughts, Daniel, about what you think about
Um,
episode 3? Because we are allowed. People talk about it already.
yeah, we're allowed to give like very broad, large picture like impressions. I
I have
enjoyed the
two.
third episode a lot. You have two. Okay. I think um the show remains very, very strong in this season. I think it's really hitting its stride, honestly, because the first season like it's a beautiful season of television, but it was so unique in the way it was structured and the very heavy amount of legwork it needed to do to introduce this cast of characters. I feel like the show is really hitting its stride, and I enjoyed the third episode quite a lot. I think people will enjoy it, and there will be a couple of things that really
Oh,
ignite the internet and the fandoms,
as always.
better and worse tendencies, maybe we'll say. What about you, Dan?
I had two thoughts on it. We got some questions like who was the standout episode 3, asked Dre. I thought Aegon was stand up for the first 2 episodes. I don't know if there really was a standout for me in season episode 3. It's a bit more ensemble-y.
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
I'm not sure
I
about
agree
that
with
answer.
that.
That's a good question. Oh no, the standout is full frontal male nudity. My two thoughts are
It
I
is. He's
thought
not even joking.
the third no, I'm not. You'll see what I mean. The This was the first episode in a while. This felt like an old-timey Game of Thrones episode to me, more than any of the others have.
Yeah,
The first
I
season
agree with that.
felt very unique because we were all skipping around in time. These first 2 episodes were kind of like these slow kind of build-ups to these big things at the end. This episode did like the action starts to pick up a little more. People are kind of on the move. There were like kind of forces
Yeah.
being mobilized. I did get like, oh, this feels like we're watching Game of Thrones again. Um,
Yeah.
the other thought I had, which is less complimentary, was that there was a
Mm.
bit of a sense of maybe marking time a bit in the third episode. I was complaining earlier about I hope they don't make Rhaenyra too nice, and the third episode sort of started to stretch it a bit for me, where it's like at some
Mm,
point, I just hope they don't make this show too didactic, where it's like we all understand that war is bad. I think that's kind of axiomatic. I guess I also want some of like the thrill of war. Like, why do people throw themselves into war? They're getting something out of it. So let's feel that and then be complicit when we see the devastation. The kind of back and forth about we shan't, we can't, we mustn't. At some point, we'll get a little old. Although I know Rook is coming in this episode 4, so I know it's probably going to be dashed to
yeah.
pieces. Overall, it's good. It does feel like old Game of Thrones because the action's starting to pick up, and that's probably all we should probably say before HBO
Yeah.
detonates the bombs under our cars.
Yeah, totally. I agree with uh most everything you said. You know, the I think that Rook's, like you said, Rook's Rest is coming, and there is a little bit of a feeling of that's going to be a game changer for a lot of characters. Which it's kind of funny, like I didn't really feel that way, even though it is the case in Fire and Blood. In Fire and Blood, you know, characters like Rhaenyra are already kind of making their transitions into being more morally ambiguous before Rook's Rest. And it feels like in the show they are going to pin a lot on Rook's Rest in terms of, you know, similar to, which we don't necessarily need to talk about too much, but maybe a little bit, the most recent
Gosh,
episode of The Acolyte, the Star Wars show, which I don't know if you've seen, Dan, but
I
the
did.
latest one, okay, well, it's a big bloody reset where whether you liked it or not, it's very obvious things are going to be different after that. And I think Rook's
Yeah,
Rest
I
will be that
guess.
for this season of House of the Dragon as well.
I mean, because the book and the show are so different. Like, it's one thing to just, write, and then they fought, and this dragon died or whatever.
Yes.
But in the show, these are the characters we're spending time with. So to see them actually, like the
Yes.
characters they built up, clash, will feel different. Looking forward to that. And I enjoyed episode 3 too. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the action happening. I enjoyed the dialogue, and I enjoyed the full frontal male nudity. So look forward to that. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
And by the
Yep.
way,
That's
Mhm.
folks. I was just gonna say, and that's all we should say. What were you gonna say? Something about folks, small folks, any folks.
They're talking about Kristen Cole. I will say, I agree. I am liking him more this season. I understand him more than this season. He's being sent out on more like tasks, and seeing him in different contexts is kind of helping me not
Yes.
loathe him. I do agree with Julie Davies though, that I know the actor is getting some hate, Fabian Frank, which is always ridiculous. Like whenever that happens,
Yeah. Not cool.
um, should be very silly, but. I mean, I'm not sure there's any way out of that at this point. It's happened so many times. We all know it's
Yeah.
coming. Whenever there's a character who isn't like, people will invariably go for the
Yeah.
actor. But I
I
think
think
that's about
it's
all we should say.
Yeah, it's a shame too. It's kind of ironic. So one, obviously, hating on actors, not cool, deranged behavior. But we've done so much complaining, and so many people have done so much complaining about like softening difficult moments. Like, just let your villains be awful. Let your
Oh
characters
no.
make villainous decisions, House of the Dragon. And it's like Kristen Cole is one of the few characters that the show really got the memo with, because I think Kristen is he's way more loathsome in the show than he is in the book. Like he's not great in the book, but they really make you hate him in the show in a different way because he's just making awful decision after awful decision and, you know, got spurned by an ex like 20 years ago and is still being a jerk about it. Except now he's in a position of power, and what does that look like? I think Kristen, he's being set up for a very interesting journey this season because, you know, Kristen was just made Hand of the King. And I love that, like, that was not an ambition of Kristen's. He's just like, um, Bushmaster's talking about Interview with the Vampire. I got confused. I'm not Daniel Malloy. Uh, but yeah, I think Kristen is being set up for a very interesting arc, and I can't wait to see where he goes for the rest of the season,
We'll
which I
see.
would not have thought to say before this.
All right. We've done a terrible job of not discussing House of the Dragon.
We've
Even our
still got
comments
half a show left.
are saying to move on, which I'm happy to do. Bushmaster, you don't need to
All
prod
right.
me to talk about Interview with the Vampire. So, other than House of the Dragon, there are other shows going on, such as
Yes.
and such things as The Boys on Amazon Prime Video,
Yes.
which is having a good season. I'm enjoying The Boys, this
Yeah, it is.
superhero program, uh, where the superheroes are all dicks and sociopaths and fascists and psychos and a little bit naughty. And it's got some mixed reviews. It's got, I think it kind of got the review bomb treatment from, I
It
don't know,
did.
I guess a lot of conservative folk who figured out that it was criticizing them. But it's on the upswing. It's all The Boys has always been a rock solid show. It's always been dependable.
Yes.
Maybe a little. My complaint with The Boys is that it can get a little repetitive. I feel like it has like this old-timey TV mindset where things tend to like go back to zero a bunch, at least at the end of every season, if not at the end of every episode, and kind of.
Yeah.
But it like looks like one of your modern House of the Dragon, Game of Thronesy. It's more like one long movie than it is a TV show kind of TV shows, but it
Yeah.
still feels like a TV show. I like it. It's fun. I'm having a good time. The last episode was a lot of fun where Homelander goes home and brutally murders all the people who raised him in the science lab. That's the kind of gleeful craziness the Boys fans, I think, come to expect. It is, as always, fully embracing its very clear parallels to our modern political moment, which it's kind of one of the only shows that really does that. The central metaphor of these superheroes being like our celebrities and our politicians, which are often the same, more and more the same thing, if you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It really goes for that, and I like how unapologetic it is. And I'm always entertained watching The Boys, if maybe not brought to the edge of bliss or despair the way a show like House of the Dragon sometimes can.
Yeah. Yeah, I again, I'm in agreement with you here, Dan. I have been really enjoying this season of The Boys, and it is a show that is so like you said, dependable, almost to a fault for me as a viewer. Like I tend to like forget about The Boys when it's not on and not really find myself like jonesing to watch more episodes of it. But
Sure.
I think this season I'm enjoying way more than last season for some reason. Like I couldn't tell you why, but there's something about the dynamics this season that is really, really working for me. I'm enjoying that um we have new villains on the field. I think
No.
Sister Sage
Hmm.
is one of the best villains the show has had in a while. Yeah, that frontal brain lobotomy was that was a thing that happened because The Boys loves its things that happens. But I like that she's been like outwitting people pretty constantly because she's just that smart, and they've introduced this element of that comes with its own, burdens as well. Uh
Sure.
Firecracker obviously hits pretty pretty well with some of our current political trends and moments and stuff like that.
Dude,
So yeah,
I've watched the
yes.
screeners for a couple episodes more. There is a firecracker moment coming up toward the end of episode 6, I think, that had me laugh out loud. So I'm looking forward to seeing people think about that when it happens. But
Oh,
won't say
cool.
anything more.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Boys has been hilarious and really, really strong this season. Um, the review bombing because people are finally realizing it is making fun of them. I'm sorry if you're one of those people, but also not sorry because that's what the show's always been about. So I'm glad you're finally realizing it, I guess. Um, and I did like the Homelander goes home type of plot line.
Yeah, that was good.
Anthony Starr, his acting, whoever said incredible acting from him, I think this was one of his best episodes of the entire series. And cool behind the scenes thing that I did not know that I read this week. He was actually responsible for a lot of kind of the tone, the tenor of that sequence. So I guess originally when
Seriously.
it was written, when it was sent to him, it was just Homelander goes to this lab and he's just awful and tortures and murders everyone. And Anthony Starr basically got back to him and was like, look, that doesn't feel quite right to me. I think he would get there and like kind of vacillate between that, being terrible and killing people, and also
Mhm.
like being confused and vulnerable and like, hey, I'm reminiscing. I'm back in my home that I haven't been in so long. So he kind of really introduced that back and forth element for that scene. And Eric Kripke, who's the showrunner, the writer, um, basically was like, he was absolutely right. He was so on point with that. And I think you see that come across in the finished episode. So The Boys is on fire right now. Great, great
Yeah,
season of television.
not a good mania. Um, Also, before and we also have to talk about another great show that I'm watching. I think this next show is the
Yeah.
best show on TV. I've been
That's a
very
bold
impressed with
statement.
this. Right now, I'm standing by it. If you are not watching
You're
Interview with
saying
the
it's better than
Vampire,
House of.
yes,
Okay.
I am. If you are not watching
Okay.
Interview with the Vampire on AMC, which I realize it's kind of hard to watch because no one has TV anymore and it's not on,
Yeah.
it's on AMC Plus. Don't you want to add AMC Plus to your network of streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Disney
I
Plus,
do not.
Max, Paramount Plus, etc., and so forth? I get it. But if you can, the first season is coming to Netflix soon. Interview with the Vampire is such a good show. It's an adaptation of Anne Rice's book of the same name. I never read it, but I saw the movie with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, which is pretty good, kind of
Oh,
a cult classic. Um,
yeah.
it's a Grey Worm. Jacob Anderson from Game of Thrones plays Louis, a Cajun vampire turned by a French Lothario hedonist vampire named Lestat, played by Sam Reed. The performances are just scrumptious. It has such a great. Anne Rice's books are famous for conceiving of vampires as these melancholy, eternal walkers of the night who are doomed to spend eternity like contemplating their own tragic contradictions. It's a very sort of erotically charged, sad way of life. And the book embraces that and sells it in a way that is very impressive, given how easily I think that kind of thing could seem cheesy, could seem stupid, or could just be underwritten or underthought to the point where it just comes across as too broad or not interesting. The showrunner here, Roland Jones, I don't know a lot about him, but I know I love him. I know he's a genius, and I know he's really put a lot of work into making sure like all the little emotional nuances are there between every character every time. There are so many layers to this show because you have
Yeah.
the past where Jacob Anderson, Grey Worm Louis the vampire, is narrating his story to this kind of wizened older journalist Daniel Malloy. He shares your name, but it's not the last one though.
And
And
your name.
I'm not Daniel. How dare you? Um, and their scenes together are great because
Mm.
Louis kind of like lies or forgets some things sometimes, and Daniel has to like root it out of him. He's such a great foil. And then they get into his past, and that was thrilling. This last episode was crazy. It was the death of a major character and just these gay vampires being as melodramatic as possible, but still it feels weighty and important and like it smacks you. This show is so good. This show is so good. I can't recommend it highly enough, and I hope more folk watch it. I've seen the finale coming this Sunday in a screener, and that blew my
Good
head
one.
off. And now they renewed it for season 3, and I'm very, very happy. And I'm probably going to read an Anne Rice book at this point. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the Vampire
Do it.
Lestat and give it a
Do
try.
it. You're gonna skip Interview with the Vampire?
I've seen the movie. I've seen the show. Come on, man. I want to get
That's
to the next
fair.
bit.
That's fair. And so I have read a couple of Anne Rice books, including Interview with the Vampire, and they do feel a little different after that one. It's kind of like in which is, because Interview is Louis' story, and none of the
Mhm.
rest of them really are really about Louis. They're all about Lestat.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, or Armand or whoever else, because she wrote a lot of books.
Yeah, she did.
I am so intrigued because I have not watched Interview with the Vampire, but I respect your opinion, Dan, and you've been raving about this show. A lot of other people whose opinions I respect have been raving about this show. Um, I've seen a few clips from it. I did see one clip from the trial that happens in this most recent episode,
That'd
which
be good.
if you've seen the 90s movie, you've read the book, you know what that's about. I'm not going to go spoiling it for people who haven't. Um, I saw another clip earlier of Louis and Armand arguing. So they've changed
Hmm.
some things because it seems like the show is
Wait.
beyond exploring what it means to have Louis as a black person in the time periods that he is living
It's
in,
really
which is not an
embraced it
element
in a
that I think that's
non-cringy,
smart.
effective way.
Yeah. It had to. If it was going to make Louis a black person, it had to embrace it, in my opinion, because it's a period piece. So I think it seems like they've done some really interesting things with that. And, leaning into a lot of the subtext of Anne Rice's stories, because, these books came out quite a while ago. They weren't as explicitly gay, but it was pretty like widely understood that that was
Sure.
what she was saying with a lot of these characters. Um, the acting just seems like everyone working on this show. I saw a quote from Roland Jones, the showrunner, where he basically said, like, this is his most important piece of art he's made, something to that effect. And you can feel that love come across even in the handful of like minute long clips that I've seen. It's like the actors have all brought their A games. The way that they're constructing this story seems super intelligent and interesting and
Mm-hmm.
surprising,
Very
even for
much.
fans. It's hard to surprise, viewers with a new take on a story, which is as widely known as Interview with the Vampire, where the book came out in the 80s. It was a cult hit. And then the movie, like, I'm old. I'm an old. So I remember this movie, and it was a massive hit when it came out, of the type that like you could, as a younger person, you enjoyed it, but you could also watch it with older people. Like my stepmom loves Interview with the Vampire, the movie, and has read the Anne Rice books since seeing the movie. And she's not really like a genre fiction, buff.
Sure.
It's not really her thing. But like that is how widespread, the influence of that movie was. So yeah, I'm happy for Interview with the Vampire that it's doing so well. I'm sad that it's on AMC Plus, because that is like the entire reason I have not watched it is that I don't want to subscribe to another streaming service. And I
I
see it,
gotcha. I gotcha.
I think Julie said it in the chat that she's in that same boat.
Yeah. But
Apparently,
I'll say to
yes.
both of you, I have two comments I want to address.
Yeah, yeah.
A, it's coming to Netflix. The first is coming to Netflix, so you don't need to get
That's what I was
AMC
gonna
Plus
say.
at least for a while. So, yeah, I get it. This can't possibly last. The reason I talk so
Yeah.
much about it is because I feel like it's not being watched enough. I shouldn't worry, I guess, if they already renewed it, but still, I want to be able to try to amplify it. So maybe that'll make the difference. So it's coming to Netflix. So just to set on that, you don't have to get AMC Plus. The other thing is somebody said
Yeah.
they fell off season two. I will say the first half of season two was kind of slow to set things up. The second half has been banger after banger after banger. So if you fell off season two, I say stick with it because I think it is earnestly worth the slightly less exciting first half to get to the
Oh God.
barn burning second half.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
even without having seen the show, I will say if you watched the first season and you liked it and you started season two, like you gotta come back to it, because
You don't have to do anything.
there are some really, you have to. This is not an optional. This is television. It's serious business. But like knowing the story, like there are some really insane things that happen. Now I know near the end of season two. So yeah, get back on that train. And I will watch it when it comes to Netflix, and
Good
probably get
times.
AMC for, you can do, I was informed today by our coworker Natalie that you can do a 7-day free trial of AMC Plus, so you could do that and binge the entire series. So I'm
Yes, of
excited
course.
to check it out at some point. I agree with you. I think more people should be talking about it, especially now that we know it is getting a third season. to do the
Oh.
book, the Vampire Lestat, which is essentially I'm gonna spoil this a little bit because whatever, these books have
Fine.
been out forever.
Good.
So the vampire Lestat is Lestat being upset with how he was portrayed in Interview with the Vampire. So he starts a rock band and goes on tour to set the record straight. And that's just such a ridiculously fun setup. They made a movie of this also in I think the 90s, might have been early 2000s. The movie was Queen of the Damned, but it combined the vampire Lestat and the following book, The Queen of the Damned was very
Mm-hmm.
famous because Aaliyah played the Queen of the Damned, that character, and she
It's
died
not
during
very
production. So
famous, yeah.
well, it was famous for the fact that Aaliyah died while they were filming
Yes.
it. So they had to CG. They did like some revolutionary
Oh, I didn't know
CGI
that.
at the time. Yeah, she died before they could do her final scenes, so they had to do a
Hmm.
lot of like digital effects work to kind of fill her into those scenes. So like the behind the scenes is really fascinating. It also has a banger of a soundtrack. Jonathan Davis from Korn was the voice of Lestat when he was singing. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what they do with that in the television show because it seems like the
Me too.
show has just done such a good job so
And
far.
corn. That doesn't date the movie. Yeah,
It does a
great
little
show.
bit.
Is there anything else that you're watching or reading, Dan, you want to sound off on before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I'm still reading Mirrored
Oh,
Heaven, which is the
good to hear.
Mesoamerican inspired fantasy series by Rebecca Roanhorse. That's the third book. I'm loving that series. I'm taking my time with it because I don't want it to end. Aside from that, I will be watching The Bear when it drops this week because I really enjoyed the first two seasons. I know you hold a Chicagoan grudge for how it has portrayed your city, but it also just has really good writing and excellent performances, so I will be watching it.
Berta,
Um,
Berta, 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 Berta.
aside from that, there are two other big ones. The Acolyte, I need to at least mention.
I
Been
mentioned it,
watching
yeah.
The Acolyte.
I watched it.
I thought this last episode was probably one of the best episodes the show has had so far. It was
Oh yeah,
one long
definitely.
fight scene. I was paid rapt attention for a lot of it, even though like the twist was pretty obvious of who the Sith
Yeah,
Lord was, I thought.
I can't believe
Like
they even sold that as a twist.
they're in this forest. It's like there was literally one other dude in the forest with them. Like there are only so many people it could have been. Uh,
They
but
didn't even
I
try to give us like a MacGuffin or something, or like one
they
other
didn't.
option.
Which, to be fair, I read an interview today. There's a really great EW cover story on this episode of The Acolyte, and the showrunner Leslie Headland basically said, "I expected people to figure it out." Like, so
Yeah.
for her, it wasn't how can I keep you guessing who the Sith Lord was. It was once I reveal it to you, the audience and the characters, I'm gonna go hard on it as brutally as possible, and they did. I was shocked at the body counts of this episode of The
Yeah, me
Acolyte.
too.
I will say I'm enjoying Amanda Stenberg as the twin characters, but I do think the writing for them is not very good. So I did
In
notice that
general.
like I paid a lot of attention to the episode, and then once the action ended and it focused on the twin drama, I
Mhm.
started to tune out a little bit because it just something about it isn't quite landing for me, even though I like a lot of things about her performance. The show's just not selling it quite as well as like the Sith Lord, that reveal, and Manny Jacinto, the actor who plays them, uh, I thought they is doing a really good job.
Sure.
So yeah, the Acolyte, I'm slightly more interested in than I was last week, but I could still fall off it at any point and I wouldn't lose sleep.
I
Have you
think you
been
hit it.
watching it?
Yeah, I have. I've been watching. It's easy, it's like a half hour read, so easy to watch. I think you hit it on the head that a
Yeah,
full action scene does give the show some energy. But yeah, when the characters actually start
yeah,
talking, you kind of realize they're a little thinly written. I mean, the whole show
yeah.
was sold as like this one twin turn to the dark side. She's ready to like just cast off the dark side with at a moment last episode and just like, I'm done with this. I'm going back. And now she's bad again. Yeah, there's just something missing. But lightsabers are fun to watch fly
I
around.
agree. Yeah, I thought the lightsaber work in this episode was probably some of the best in any of the Disney Plus shows. Because they've had some real hit and miss like lightsaber stuff. Like some of it looks amazing, some of it really just isn't up to the standard you would hope for lightsaber duels. Um, I thought this episode went hard. I gasped. I went, holy shit, like multiple times throughout the episode because they did some really crazy stuff. Holy pantaloons, whatever. I don't know.
It went
Yeah,
harder than
so
you'd
the
expect Star Wars to go. Still no blood. I
it
hope.
did.
Would you agree with me now that it's not made for literal kids with neck snaps?
You know, I would have enjoyed it as a child because I liked Star Wars and didn't really have censorship of what I watched in my household.
Sure.
But yes, I think you're right. I think this was the episode where it was like, oh, you all think this could be a kids show? It's not. So yeah, fair. The next snap was pretty brutal. Uh, not
It's
made for kids,
teens.
even
Teens are
though it
fine.
at times feels like it.
It's made for teens and the teens inside all of us, including kids.
Yes,
Um, let's just move
exactly.
on.
Um,
Uh,
there's one other thing I want to mention before we hit the lightning round. One
okay.
other piece of media I have been consuming that is House of the Dragon adjacent, so I need to
Go
mention it.
on.
Um, I've been playing a new video game recently called Tales of
What?
Kenzera Zhao.
Sounds dorky.
And it's a side scroller. It is with African myth, kind of like a mix between Black Panther stylistically with the play style of like a Mega Man game.
Okay.
And the studio that made this was it's Surgent Studios. It was founded by Abu Bakar Salim, the guy who
Oh,
plays Alan of Hull in House of the Dragon. He's also very, well known in the video game world because he voiced Bayek of Siwa in Assassin's Creed Origins. So he started his own studio. He made this game kind of it's about this person going through grief because they lost their father and basically has this really deep story about that uses myth to kind of explore what that looks like for a person and the different ways that we go through grief and stuff like that. Really excellent. um it also has, and I did not know this, Solomon actually tweeted about this.
did he?
Steve Toussaint, who plays Corlys Valerian, is one of the voices in this game. Uh, and so is Solemn. So both of them play characters in this game. And that is because so they met on House of the Dragon, and Abu Bakar Salim convinced Steve Toussaint to come do a voice in the game. I just thought that was
Cool.
super cool. It's a very enjoyable game. If you're looking for something light, you can finish in maybe like 10-ish, 12 hours and kind of it light to play but heavy emotionally.
Nice.
Really fun game. So I just wanted to shout that out.
I like that Abubakar Salim is one of those guys who like tweets every couple of minutes 'cause he's like he's one of those guys who's like, I'm gonna build my brand. I am gonna sell
Yes.
myself on social media and I am not gonna stop. I appreciate the hustle. And
Yeah.
Julie mentioned that she's rereading the Duncan Egg novellas. I have, and I just have a so I'm gonna start reading
Oh,
that soon,
nice.
but I'm busy, so give me a second.
Wait, wait. Claudia says there she's watching The Serpent Queen. Is that the one with Charles Dance? Um, I saw a
Find
picture. I'm looking it up right now. I don't know if this is the one with Charles Dance. Uh, if it's
the life
not,
of
then
Catherine de
I'm just
Medici.
it is the one with Charles
Uh,
Dance.
yes, it
Yeah.
is.
So I saw
As the Pope.
I saw an ad for this. I thought it was a meme and couldn't possibly be a real thing because it was just Charles Dance as the Pope. Uh, is it any good, Claudia? Let us know in the chat.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that's what I've been getting into lately. Do you have
very
anything
cool.
else that you've
Yeah,
been
but
enjoying you want to talk about?
the Acolyte, I'm still playing Animal Well on the Switch, but I'm just busy. I'm so busy.
Ooh, fun.
And someone
Yeah.
asked how we get the Interview with Vampire Screeners early, because when you're a journalist, I put it in quotes, sometimes they
Why are you
give you
putting that in
things you
quotes,
ask for
Dan?
them.
You are, Dan.
Because
Embrace it.
I don't know, blogger. I don't know if we can call ourselves journalists exactly. We're more like bloggers. It's like a journalist little brother who has no legs. That's what we are. So let's move on to the lightning round where we go through a bunch of stories we didn't have time to get to in the main body of the show and give you our rapid fire 20-second thoughts. Hey,
Sounds good.
Daniel, if you had to
Um,
guess,
yes,
would you guess that I put these in order or that I haven't?
I'm gonna guess that you haven't, but
That's
I should
correct.
ask you. I should ask you first.
Okay,
Is what
hit
the
me.
order feels like to me looking at it.
Let's do it.
So check out this picture, everyone. And sorry, audio listeners, check it out with your mind. It's David Corenswet as Superman and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane.
On the set of James Gunn's new film, Superman. Yeah, I mean, they're making a Superman movie. They're always going to. Got a new guy, Superman. Richard Brosnahan from Mrs. Maisel as Lois Lane. That I like a lot. David Cornswell, I don't really know that
Yeah.
well. His suit is kind of a little ill-fitting, but I imagine they're gonna like it's a post-production kind of thing where they'll muscle it up in the editing bay. That could be fun. Coming out next year, I think. Daniel,
Yeah.
this is a pretty big one. HBO, possibly Max, they seem to be blending more and more these days, has ordered straight to series an 8-episode season of a Green Lantern show, speaking of DC, called Lanterns.
Yeah, and I think this is helmed by Damon Lindelof from Lost. And so this is part of HBO's new shift where they're not doing Max originals as much. They're airing them on HBO. And this seems like a pretty
Ugh.
cool expansion of their DC universe. I I will watch a Damon Lindelof show any day of the week.
Sure.
So I can't wait to see what he does with this. Could be really cool.
H HBO is going to get weird. Okay, hit me.
Yes, one can only hope. Um, okay, so Josh Gad, I don't know who that is, by the way.
What? You
Josh
know who Josh
Gad is
Gad is?
making. I'm sorry,
Comedian.
Josh Gad. I don't know who you are.
He's the
You don't live
snowman
in
from Frozen.
Westeros. Oh,
Olaf.
okay. Olaf from Frozen, is that makes this way more fun, actually. Olaf from Frozen is making a Spaceball sequel, with Mel Brooks attached to produce.
Okay, Josh Gad on, I mean, I feel whatever about Spaceballs. Let me tell you, when I'm a kid, I have this
Yeah.
VHS tape of Spaceballs. I put that in when I'm like 9. I laugh my ass off. I quote that movie to this day. I won't do it here because most of the quotes are pretty profane. Your Schwartz is as big as mine. Love this movie when I was a kid. Still love it. A sequel, I'd probably watch it. Josh Gad, I'm like, I don't know, maybe, but that I love that movie a lot. Star Wars,
It's a
a parody
classic.
comedy. Mel Brooks. Hey, Daniel,
Yeah,
they're
great
making The
movie.
Witcher season 4. Here's movie icon Lawrence Fishburne, Morpheus in the Matrix, Bobby in What's That Got to Do with It as the vampire Regis. Like,
Yeah, I
Bobby
guess we're giving away the spoiler here that he is a vampire. This is one of those things like the egg is a
Ike,
Targaryen and Duncan Egg,
Ike.
where it's
Mhm.
just so widely known it's hard to really keep it as a spoiler. I don't know what's going on with this wig. I hope this was a test wig. I love Lawrence Fishburne. I don't know how I feel about him as Regis. But I'm excited to see what he does with it. But oof, that wig. Someone stop committing crimes against Lawrence Fishburne's head. Um, okay. Oh, here we go. We were just talking about the Acolyte.
We should have brought that up, yeah.
Apparently, haters of the Acolyte are being so hateful toward it that they're accidentally review bombing The Wrong Thing, the 2008 thriller Acolytes, which is not a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, not at all related. I mean, sometimes the internet chooses a show or a movie to just be the avatar of everything they loathe about whatever they hate that month. Like, I don't think the Acolyte's
Yeah.
that great a show, that good a show, but it's become a lightning rod, or at least it was. Kind of dying down now, and they they review bombed Acolytes. A 28 has nothing to do with it, which is just kind of funny. Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you up. I don't know if you're
You
into
can
this,
shuffle stuff
but
around if you want.
I'm not
You
gonna.
want to ask me about Mark Mylod? I'm fine with that.
Okay,
If you
fine.
want to talk about that one.
Sure. Daniel, Francesca Gardner, and Mark Mylod, who together have worked on such shows as Succession, Game of Thrones, His Dark Materials, others, are going
Yeah.
to be the main producers and directors on HBO's or Max's, whatever, Harry Potter TV show.
I strongly dislike it. Um,
Do you dislike
basically,
them or just the whole thing?
the whole thing. I love Mark Mylod. I'm not quite as familiar with Francesca Gardner, but I think, I used to work in a bookstore. I've been watching the Harry Potter cash grab be shamelessly awful for like the past like decade and a half. There's no way that was 20 seconds, Richard. Yeah, I hate this on premise. I wish Mark Mylod had better things to do than Harry
All
Potter.
right, Daniel,
Um,
hater, gonna go review bomb a pot store. Okay, hit me.
Yeah, if there's one thing I hate, it is the J.K. Rowling cash grab eternal that is Harry Potter merchant remakes.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
apparently I have strong opinions. I didn't know till we got talking about it. That's a lie I knew. Okay, so here's the one I thought you might want to talk about. So Robert Eggers is his movie Nosferatu is coming out on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas.
I do love that on Christmas Day. I think it happens sometimes. They do like a horror movie on Christmas Day, like counter program. Robert Eggers, really cool, kind of
Yeah.
like modern auteur. There aren't a lot of those. Like The Lighthouse, The Witch, The Northman, really distinctive
The
filmmaker,
Witch.
remaking Nosferatu, a 1922 silent film that's been remade a couple of times. It's almost like the new, it's like Little Women with the horror movies. I like Nosferatu. I love Robert Eggers. I would like to see it, please. Okay. And finally, Daniel, um,
Yes.
George R. Martin wrote on his not a blog that the next Game of Thrones prequel, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, is going to come out in early 2025. I quotes it, but he amended it to just say just 2025. What do you think happened?
I think that's funny. I don't know if this was widely said or you just caught this. I think that's
It was going around.
hilarious. Okay. So yeah, he had written on his not a blog coming in early 2025, and I guess someone at HBO maybe called him and said, "Hey, please don't make it so people will be mad at us when it comes out in June or whatever." So he took out the early. So Duncan Egg coming sometime in 2025.
All right. Sweet. Another spinoff, Fantasy Fan says. Sounds like a question for
Indeed.
another day. Do we need it? We talk about it, but we're out of time. Thanks for watching, everybody. We are
Nice.
here every Wednesday live on the Winners Coming Facebook and YouTube channel. Also, again, we're doing live recap reviews, impressions of every episode of House of the Dragon immediately after they air on Sunday evenings. And even beyond that, we have a TikTok, call it a WiC Talk, it just makes the most sense. We have our YouTube shorts where you can see us in little digestible bits. We're available in podcast form wherever podcasts are available, be it Google Play, YouTube Music, or elsewhere. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, toss money at your screen. Maybe we'll get it. And we just really appreciate you continuing to watch us, talk to us. We had a lot of fun today. Thanks for all your comments. You guys are always a blast. We will see you Sunday, Wednesday, or someday. Goodbye, everybody, and good luck.
Take care, all.